Part 1, The Lonely Corner. Kira sat in the farthest corner of the cafeteria, just like she did every single day. The spot had basically become hers at this point. Not because she claimed it or anything, but because nobody else wanted to sit there. Nobody wanted to sit anywhere near her, actually. It wasn't personal. At least, that's what she told herself. Celestial Academy was massive. The station orbited a neutron star and housed students from 4 to 7 different species. You had kids with crystal bodies that refracted light in rainbow patterns. You had methane breathers who needed special atmosphere suits just to walk around. You had telepaths, shapeshifters, and beings made of pure energy contained in magnetic fields. It was basically the universe's biggest melting pot, and somehow, Kira still ended up eating alone. The problem was simple. She was Velkhani. Her people had only joined the Galactic Coalition 3 generations ago. Before that, they'd been isolated on their homeworld, stuck in their own little bubble. And when they finally did join the bigger galactic community, they brought all their baggage with them. Specifically, about 800 years worth of rigid social protocols that made absolutely no sense to anyone else. See, talking to a Velkhani wasn't like talking to other species. You couldn't just walk up and say hello. First, you had to observe their skin color. Kira's was translucent blue, but it shifted through different shades depending on her mood and social status. Then you had to position your body at the correct angle based on whether you were greeting an equal, a superior, or someone beneath you. Then there were the hand gestures, 17 different ones just for basic greetings. And if you messed up even one little thing, you could accidentally tell someone their family line was garbage or challenge them to a ritual combat or something equally awkward. Most students at the academy looked at that whole situation and said, yeah, no thanks. It was easier to just avoid Velkhani students altogether. Less chance of accidentally starting an interstellar incident over lunch. Kira didn't really blame them. She'd grown up with these protocols, and even she found them exhausting sometimes. But they were part of her culture, part of her identity. Her people had developed these rules for a reason. Centuries of tribal warfare had taught them that clear communication prevented bloodshed. Every gesture had meaning. Every color shift conveyed intention. It had brought peace to her world. But it also meant she ate lunch alone every day. She picked at her meal, a protein synthesis block flavored to approximate Velkhani cuisine. It tasted like cardboard trying to cosplay as food. Around her, the cafeteria buzzed with life. A group of Thek students sparkled and chimed at each other in their light-based language. Some Dorgathai kids were arguing about gravitational physics, their voices modulated through their atmosphere helmets. A cluster of Zentari were literally passing thoughts between each other, their conversation completely silent but apparently hilarious based on how they kept rippling with laughter. And Kira sat alone, glowing a dull blue that signified resigned acceptance. She tried joining study groups during her first week. That had been a disaster. She'd approached a mixed species group working on quantum mechanics and performed the proper greeting sequence, color shift to friendly peer seeking knowledge, hand position indicating request for mutual benefit, stance suggesting equal status interaction. The other students had just stared at her like she'd grown a second head. One of them had nervously said, we're good, thanks, and they'd all suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. After that, Kira stopped trying. 3 weeks into the semester, the cafeteria was its usual chaotic self when something different happened. The doors slid open and a human walked in. Kira had heard about humans. Everybody had. They were the absolute newest species to join the coalition. Their planet, Earth, they called it, had only been contacted 8 months ago. The coalition had spent that entire time arguing about whether humans were ready for integration. They were primitive by galactic standards. They still used combustion engines on parts of their world. They hadn't even colonized their own solar system yet. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and had nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons during something called the Cold War. But they were also weirdly innovative. They'd gone from first flight to landing on their moon in just 66 years. Their computer technology had advanced faster in 50 years than most species managed in 5 centuries. And they had this bizarre ability to adapt to pretty much anything. The coalition had eventually decided to run an experiment, send a few human students to various academies and see what happened. This particular human looked completely out of place. He was tall, with dark skin and short black hair. He wore the standard academy uniform but had customized it with some kind of earth patch on the shoulder. He was carrying a tray with something that definitely wasn't cafeteria food. It looked like he'd brought his own meal from wherever humans stored their stuff. Kira watched as he scanned the cafeteria. Every table was packed. Students were crammed shoulder to shoulder, or whatever they had instead of shoulders. Every table except one. The human's eyes landed on her corner. For a moment, Kira's glow flickered with anxiety. He was going to turn around. Everyone always turned around. But he didn't. He walked straight toward her table, weaving between chairs and carefully avoiding stepping on Azentari's sensory tentacles. He reached her corner, pulled out the chair across from her, and just sat down. No greeting protocol. No careful color observation. No hand gestures. He just sat there. Then he did something even weirder. He opened the container on his tray, it was releasing steam and smelled absolutely bizarre, and he pushed half of it toward her across the table. He smiled, big and friendly and completely ignorant of proper introduction sequences. You like pizza? Kira's entire body flashed through 6 different colors in rapid succession: confusion, surprise, uncertainty, caution, curiosity, and something she didn't have a name for in galactic standard. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed erratically. She stared at the triangular thing. Pizza, he'd called it. It was covered in red sauce, melted yellow substance, and circular meat discs. It smelled wrong. It looked wrong. By every standard of Velkhani culinary practice, this was probably mildly toxic. But that wasn't what had her frozen. This human had just violated about 4 to 7 different social protocols, and he was sitting there smiling like he'd done something completely normal. And somehow, for the first time in 3 weeks, Kira didn't feel quite so alone. The human was still smiling at her, completely unbothered by the fact that Kira hadn't responded. Most species would have taken her stunned silence as a rejection by now. But he just sat there, looking genuinely happy to be sharing his weird earth food. I'm Jake, by the way, he said, taking a massive bite of his pizza slice. Jake Carter. Just got here 3 days ago. Still figuring out where everything is. Yesterday I accidentally walked into a meditation chamber thinking it was the bathroom. There were like 12 Zentari in there doing some kind of group consciousness thing, and I just barged in asking where the toilets were. Pretty sure I interrupted something important. He laughed at his own story, and Kira found herself staring. He was just talking. No formal introduction. No establishing social hierarchy. No careful observation of her color patterns to determine the appropriate conversation level. Just casual, random talking like they were already friends. So, you gonna try it or just analyze it all day? Jake gestured at the pizza slice. I mean, I get it. Earth food probably looks weird to you. This probably looks weird to everyone here. But trust me, pizza is like humanity's greatest achievement. We've got the internet, space travel, antibiotics, and pizza. Pizza might actually be the most important one. Kira's marking shifted to cautious curiosity with underlying concern. She pulled out her portable scanner, standard equipment for students trying alien cuisine, and ran it over the pizza slice. The device beeped softly, displaying nutritional information. High in fats and carbohydrates, excessive sodium, but nothing immediately toxic to Velkhani biology. She picked up the slice carefully. It was warm, and the cheese, that's what the yellow substance was called, her translator supplied, stretched in strings. She took the smallest bite possible. Flavor exploded across her taste receptors. It was salty, savory, rich, and completely unlike anything she'd ever eaten. Velkhani food was carefully balanced, optimized for nutrition and designed to maintain proper bodily color regulation. This pizza was none of those things. This pizza was just delicious. Her skin flashed a quick burst of surprised pleasure before she could control it. Jake's smile got even bigger. Yeah? You like it? Awesome. This is actually from the human section of the station. We got like this tiny corner where they're testing Earth food to see what's safe for the replicators. Right now it's mostly just pizza, burgers, and something called ramen. But hey, it's better than those protein blocks everyone else eats. Those things taste like sadness shaped into cubes. And that's how it started. The next day, Jake showed up again. This time he had tacos. The day after that, dumplings. Then curry. Then something called falafel that was wrapped in flatbread with vegetables and sauce. Each time, he'd explain what it was, where on earth it came from, and usually tell some random story about his life back home. Kira learned that Jake was from a place called Atlanta. That he had 2 younger sisters who were absolute chaos gremlins according to him. That he'd been obsessed with space since he was 6 years old and watched some show called Star Trek. That he'd applied to the exchange program the second Earth announced it, even though his parents were terrified about sending him to a space station 30 light-years from home. They cried at the transport station, Jake said one day, munching on his pizza. Like, full-on ugly crying. My mom kept saying you're going to get eaten by aliens and my dad kept trying to be supportive, but you could tell he was also thinking I was gonna get eaten by aliens. I had to promise to send messages twice a week minimum. The weird thing was, Jake never asked Kira about proper protocols. He never studied Velkhani greeting sequences or tried to learn her color patterns. He just treated her like a person. When she was confused, he explained things. When she had questions, he answered them. When she made observations about human behavior that were probably kind of insulting, he just laughed. Wait, so you're saying humans just argue with each other for fun? Kira asked one afternoon, watching a group of human students debate something loudly by the doorway. Oh yeah, all the time, Jake said. That's just how we communicate. We argue about everything. Sports, politics, whether hot dogs are sandwiches, if water is wet, you name it. It doesn't mean we're actually mad. It's like verbal exercise. That seems extremely inefficient. Oh, it totally is. But it's also how we figure out what we think about stuff. My dad always says that humans don't really know what they believe until they've argued about it at least 3 times. By the end of the second week, other students started noticing. Kira would see them watching as Jake sat down at her table, as she actually responded to his questions, as her skin color started shifting into patterns that weren't just neutral politeness or resigned acceptance. She started glowing amber sometimes. Warm, content amber. It was a color Velkhani only showed to close family members in private. You definitely weren't supposed to display it in public, and absolutely not around other species. But when Jake told his terrible Earth jokes, why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. Get it? She couldn't help it. The amber just happened. That's when the messages started. The first one came from another Velkhani student named Velrin. Just 3 words, improper social display. Then another, you're embarrassing our people. Then one from a Velkhani upperclassman, protocol violations have been documented. The cultural attaché has been notified. Kira's glow dimmed when she read them. She'd known this was coming. She'd been breaking protocols left and right. Showing inappropriate colors. Engaging in hierarchy-undefined relationships. Accepting food gifts without proper reciprocation sequences. But the worst part was, she didn't want to stop. Jake noticed immediately. Hey, you okay? You just went from amber to this dark blue color. That's not good, is it? I'm fine, Kira said, but her markings betrayed her, flickering with anxiety mixed with resignation. You're a terrible liar. Your whole body is literally telling me you're not fine. Despite everything, Kira felt her colors shift slightly toward amused appreciation. My people would say that's why we developed color communication. Lying is much harder when your skin tells the truth. So what's wrong? Kira hesitated. How could she explain Velkhani's social structure to someone who'd casually demolished it just by being friendly? I'm receiving concerns from other Velkhani students. About my behavior. What, eating lunch with me? Among other things. Jake frowned, and Kira noticed something interesting. Humans couldn't change colors, but their faces were incredibly expressive. Right now, Jake's face showed what she was learning to recognize as determination. That's stupid, he said flatly. You're not doing anything wrong. We're just having lunch and hanging out. If they've got a problem with that, that's their problem, not yours. It's not that simple. My people have protocols. Yeah, and my people used to have protocols about who could sit where on buses and who could marry who and all kinds of stupid stuff. Protocols aren't always right just because they are old. Kira stared at him. That was probably the most radical thing anyone had ever said to her. Besides, Jake continued, pulling out his tablet, I've been doing some research. About Velkhani culture. I know I probably should have done this from the start, but better late than never, right? And I found something interesting. He turned the tablet toward her. On the screen was an academic paper about Velkhani social evolution. Your protocols weren't always this rigid, Jake said. Like 500 years ago, they were way more flexible. They only got super strict after your planet's unification wars. The protocols were tools to prevent conflict, not rules for their own sake. At least that's what this professor argues. Kira read the paper's abstract, her colors shifting to surprised contemplation. She'd never thought about it that way. So maybe, Jake said, we're not breaking protocols. Maybe we're just remembering what they were originally for. Connection between people, not walls between them. For the 3rd time since meeting Jake, Kira's skin flashed that warm amber color. But this time, she didn't try to hide it. The announcement came during third period quantum mechanics. Everyone's tablets pinged simultaneously, which was unusual enough to make Professor Tikvar pause mid-lecture about dimensional folding theories. Breaking news from the Coalition Council, the message read. Following successful integration trials, Earth has been approved for full student exchange program expansion. Beginning next semester, human students will be placed across all academy stations in the network. Detailed cultural briefings will be provided to all current students. The classroom erupted. Not in cheers, more like confused chatter mixed with concern. The Thek students started chiming rapidly at each other in their light language. A group of Dorgothai began what sounded like an argument. Even Professor Tikvar looked uncertain, his sensory stalks twitching nervously. Kira felt her skin shift to uncertain gray. She glanced toward the back of the classroom where Jake sat today. He was grinning like someone had just told him Christmas came early. By lunch, the entire station was buzzing about it. The cafeteria was louder than Kira had ever heard it. Every species had an opinion, and nobody was being quiet about sharing it. Finally, one of the human students was saying loudly, "I've been the only one from Earth in my entire dorm section. It's been lonely as hell." "This is a mistake," a Thek student chimed, their crystalline body pulsing red. "Humans are too unpredictable. They don't understand proper social boundaries." "That's exactly why we need more of them," countered a Zentari. "The coalition has been stagnant for centuries. Humans bring chaos, yes, but also innovation." "Chaos is not a virtue," a Dorgothai rumbled through their helmet speaker. Jake dropped his tray on the table with a thud, pizza and some kind of sandwich piled high. "Did you hear? They're sending like 50 more humans next semester." 50. "We're gonna have actual Earth culture here." Someone said they might even set up a basketball court in the recreation dome. "Basketball?" Kira asked. "It's this game where you throw a ball through a hoop. It's amazing." "Well, it's amazing if you're playing it. Watching other people play it is actually pretty boring unless you're emotionally invested in one of the teams. But that's not the point. The point is, Earth is going mainstream, baby." Kira wanted to share his enthusiasm. She really did. But something felt off. Around them, she could hear snippets of conversation that made her markings flicker with concern. Cultural contamination. Too aggressive for proper integration. Look what happened with the Velkani girl. That last one made her freeze. They were talking about her. About her friendship with Jake. Using her as an example of what could go wrong. She wasn't the only one who noticed. Jake's smile faded. "Hey, ignore them. People are always scared of change." But the whispers continued throughout the day. By evening, when Kira returned to her quarters, she found an official summons waiting on her door display. "Kira of House Telvan, you are required to appear before Cultural Attaché Velkov tomorrow at 0900 station time. Attendance is mandatory. Failure to comply will result in formal sanctions." Her skin went ice blue. That was bad. That was really, really bad. Velkoth was the Velkani ambassador to Celestial Academy, responsible for maintaining their species' reputation and ensuring proper cultural representation. He was old guard, traditional, the kind of Velkani who thought their people's isolation had been a good thing. Kira had avoided his attention for her entire time at the academy. Until now. She barely slept that night. Her roommate, a quiet Zentari named Rix who mostly kept to herself, asked if she was okay twice. Kira just flickered distress patterns and pretended to study. The next morning, she stood outside Velkotha's office, her colors cycling through every shade of anxious blue possible. The door slid open before she could even announce herself. "Enter," a deep voice commanded. Velkotha's office was decorated in traditional Velkani style. All smooth surfaces and bioluminescent panels that shifted through calming patterns. It should have felt comfortable. Instead, it felt like a trap. The ambassador himself sat behind a traditional meditation platform. He was old, his translucent skin showing the deep blue of someone who'd mastered complete emotional control. His markings were ancient family line symbols that Kira recognized from her history lessons. This was someone who came from one of the founding houses of Velkani civilization. "Kira of House Telvan," he said, his colors displaying formal authority addressing subordinate. "Do you know why you are here?" "I can guess, sir." She performed the proper subordinate acknowledging superior stance, even though every muscle in her body wanted to run. "Then you know that your behavior has been concerning. You have been observed engaging in inappropriate social displays. Showing colors in public that should remain private. accepting food from another species without proper exchange protocols, spending extensive time with a human student in what appears to be a hierarchy-undefined relationship. Each statement made Kira's colors flicker darker. Sir, I haven't meant any disrespect to our people. Intention is irrelevant, Velkoth cut her off, his tone sharp. Impact is what matters. Do you understand what is happening? The Coalition Council has just approved full human integration. This decision was contentious. Many species, including some of our own representatives, voted against it. And now, as humans prepare to spread across the coalition, what example do they see? A Velkhani student who has abandoned her cultural identity to adopt human social patterns. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? Velkoth's colors shifted to disappointed authority. You glow amber in public spaces. You engage in unstructured conversation without establishing proper context. You have allowed this human to treat you as if our protocols don't exist. And in doing so, you suggest to the entire station that Velkhani culture is flexible, malleable, unimportant. Our protocols are important, Kira said, her voice steadier than she felt. But they're not supposed to isolate us. The whole point was to facilitate communication, not prevent it. The point was to prevent the chaos that nearly destroyed our world. Velkoth's colors flashed rare anger display before he controlled himself. When he spoke again, his tone was ice-cold. You are young. You were born after unification, after peace was established. You did not see what I saw. You did not watch our people tear each other apart because of misunderstandings and unchecked emotions. Our protocols saved us. They gave us structure when we had only chaos. Kira felt her resolve wavering. She'd never thought about it from that perspective. The protocols had saved her people. Who was she to dismiss them? I understand your reasoning, sir. I do. But Jake, the human student, he hasn't caused chaos. He's caused connection. For now, Velkoth said quietly. But what happens when 50 humans arrive? When 100 arrive? When our young people, seeing your example, begin to believe that they can simply ignore millennia of careful cultural development? What happens when the structure that holds us together begins to crack? He stood, his full height imposing even by Velkhani standards. I am not unsympathetic, Kira. I understand the appeal of the human simplicity. But simplicity is not wisdom. You will end your association with the human student. You will attend cultural recalibration sessions. You will display proper Velkhani social patterns. This is not a request. And if I refuse? Velkoth's colors showed regret mixed with determination. Then I will recommend your removal from the exchange program and return to our homeworld. I do not wish to do this. But I will protect our people's integrity, even if it means protecting you from your own choices. Kira left the office feeling like she'd been physically struck. Her colors were so dim she was almost gray. Students in the corridor gave her concerned looks, but nobody approached. Even non-Velkhani could tell she was in distress. She avoided Jake for the rest of the day. Skipped lunch entirely. Went to the library instead of her afternoon classes and sat in the furthest corner, trying to process everything. Her tablet kept pinging. Messages from Jake. Hey, where were you at lunch? You okay? Did I do something wrong? Kira, seriously, what's going on? She couldn't answer them. What would she even say? That their friendship was considered a cultural threat? That she'd been ordered to stop talking to him? That the very thing that had made her feel less alone was now being used as evidence that humans were dangerous? That evening, Jake found her anyway. He'd apparently asked around until someone told him about her library spot. He dropped into the chair across from her, and she saw concern written all over his face. Okay, what happened? And don't say nothing because you've been basically monochrome all day and I'm pretty sure that's bad. I can't talk to you anymore, Kira said flatly. I've been ordered to end our friendship. Jake blinked. You've been ordered? By who? By Ambassador Velkoth. By my culture. By everyone who thinks that what we're doing is wrong. But it's not wrong. We're literally just eating lunch together. To you it's just lunch. To them, it's cultural erosion. Evidence that humans are dangerous. Proof that your species shouldn't be integrated. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised her. Okay. Then I'm going to fix this. You can't fix this, Jake. This is bigger than. I'm challenging Velkoth to a formal debate. Kira's colors flashed shock, disbelief, concern all at once. What? Jake, no. You can't. That's Do you even know what you're saying? Yeah. I looked it up. Velkhani Formal Debate Protocol. It's a sanctioned way to challenge authority decisions that affect individual rights. If I invoke it properly, he has to accept. And if I win, he has to acknowledge that our friendship doesn't violate the actual purpose of your protocols. And if you lose? Jake's expression was dead serious. Then I'll respect the decision and leave you alone. But I'm not losing. Because I'm right, and somewhere deep down, I think he knows it too. Kira stared at him, her colors cycling through emotions faster than she could process. You're insane. You know that, right? You've been here less than a month, and you're going to debate a cultural ambassador who's been practicing Velkhani protocols for longer than your grandparents have been alive. Yeah, Jake grinned. But I'm human. We're kinda known for doing insane things. It's pretty much our whole deal. The news spread through the academy like wildfire. A human was challenging a Velkhani cultural ambassador to a formal debate. Not just any human, the human who'd been at the academy for less than a month. The human who'd accidentally walked into a meditation chamber thinking it was a bathroom. That human was going to debate someone who'd been practicing diplomatic protocols since before Earth had discovered faster-than-light travel was even theoretically possible. The central amphitheater was packed. Not just packed, absolutely crammed with students from every species imaginable. Thek students hung from the upper levels where their crystalline bodies could refract the light displays. Dorgathai had set up special atmosphere stations along the walls. Zentari were clustered in telepathic groups, probably sharing thoughts about what was about to happen. Even the professors showed up, trying to look official but clearly just as curious as everyone else. Kira sat in the front section designated for Velkhani students, her skin cycling through anxious patterns she couldn't control. Next to her, Velrin, the student who'd sent her that first warning message, was glowing with smug satisfaction anticipation. He clearly expected this to be a disaster for Jake, and by extension, a lesson for Kira about why you don't break protocols. The debate stage was set up in traditional Velkhani style. 2 platforms, elevated and facing each other. Between them, a meditation circle where the neutral moderator would stand. The moderator was Professor Siktar, a Velkhani elder who taught coalition history and was known for being absolutely impartial and completely terrifying. Ambassador Velkoth entered first, moving with the kind of fluid grace that came from decades of protocol training. His colors were perfect, confident authority mixed with calm wisdom. He positioned himself on his platform with textbook precision. Every movement meant something. Every color shift conveyed intention. He was basically a walking demonstration of everything Velkhani culture had spent centuries perfecting. Then Jake walked in, and the entire amphitheater went quiet. He was wearing formal debate robes. Actual Velkhani debate robes, in the style worn by students challenging authority on matters of individual rights. Kira's colors flashed shock. Where had he even gotten those? They were traditional, historical, the kind of thing you only saw in museums or old recordings. Jake positioned himself on his platform, and Kira noticed something else. His posture was correct. Not perfect, but correct. He'd learned the proper stance. The proper hand positions. He'd actually studied. Professor Siktar stepped into the meditation circle, his ancient skin showing neutral gray. We gather today to hear a formal challenge. Jake Carter of Earth has invoked the right of individual context, challenging Ambassador Velkotha's directive regarding social association protocols. The terms are clear. If the ambassador successfully defends his position, the directive stands. If the challenger presents superior argument, the directive must be withdrawn. Velkotha's colors showed acknowledgement of terms. Jake mimicked the gesture. It was slightly off, but the fact that he tried sent a murmur through the Velkhani students. Ambassador Velkoth, Professor Siktar said. Present your foundation. Velkotha's voice filled the amphitheater, rich and controlled. I speak not from personal preference, but from historical necessity. Our protocols exist because our people nearly destroyed themselves. 800 years ago, Velkan was a world divided. Hundreds of nations, thousands of tribes, all lacking clear methods of communication. Misunderstandings led to conflicts. Conflicts led to wars. Wars nearly led to extinction. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Our protocols saved us. They gave us a common language of intention. When every gesture has meaning, there is no room for misinterpretation. When every color conveys emotion, there is no space for deception. This structure brought peace. This structure brought unity. This structure allowed us to survive. The amphitheater was silent. Even the non-Vulcani students looked moved. Kira felt her colors dimming. He was right. How could she argue with that? Now humans arrive, Velkoth continued, his colors shifting to concerned authority. A species that ignores protocol. That values spontaneity over structure. That treats social interaction as something casual rather than carefully constructed. And we see the result. Young Velcani, like Kira of House Telvan, beginning to believe that our protocols are optional. That millennia of wisdom can be dismissed in favor of simplicity. He looked directly at Kira. I do not blame her. I do not even blame the human. But I must protect our people from the chaos that follows when structure crumbles. That is my duty. That is my foundation. Professor Siktar turned to Jake. Challenger. Your response. Jake took a breath. When he spoke, his voice wasn't as smooth as Velkoth's, but it was sincere. Ambassador, I'm not here to argue against your protocols. I'm really not. What your people built is incredible. You took chaos and created order. You took miscommunication and created clarity. That's amazing. Earth could have used something like that about 1,000 times in our history. Several students shifted, clearly not expecting that opening. But here's the thing, Jake continued. Protocols are tools. They're supposed to serve people, not the other way around. And I think somewhere along the way, your people forgot that. Velkoth's colors flashed challenge of premise. Explain. Okay, so I did some research. A lot of research, actually. Barely slept for 3 days because your cultural database is massive. But I found something interesting. Jake pulled out his tablet. 500 years ago, Velcani protocols were different. Not gone, different. More flexible. There were actually protocols for adapting protocols when interacting with new cultures. Your people expected to meet other species eventually, and they built flexibility into the system. He swiped through documents, projecting them onto the displays around the amphitheater. But then came the isolation period. 300 years where Velkan cut itself off from galactic communication. And during that time, the protocols stopped evolving. They froze. What was meant to be a living system became rigid rules. Kira's colors shifted to surprised realization. She'd never learned this in school. Why had no one taught this? So when you say I'm ignoring protocols, Jake said, I'm actually not. I'm following the older ones. The original intent. The ones that said connect with other beings in ways that create mutual understanding. Yeah, I didn't do the hand gestures right. Yeah, I didn't observe color patterns before sitting down. But I offered food in friendship. I showed genuine interest in Kira as a person. I created connection. Isn't that what protocols were supposed to do? The amphitheater erupted in chatter. Professor Siktar had to call for silence twice. Velkoth's colors showed respect for argument but disagreement. You cite historical flexibility, but ignore historical consequence. The isolation period occurred precisely because earlier flexibility led to conflicts with other species. We withdrew to protect ourselves. Yeah, and you survived, Jake said. But at what cost? You're one of the most advanced species in the coalition, but Kira eats lunch alone every day. Not because people hate her. Because they're terrified of accidentally insulting her. Your protocols don't connect you to other species anymore. They wall you off. Walls provide safety. Walls also provide loneliness. The simplicity of that statement hit hard. Kira saw colors flickering among the Velcani students, recognition, discomfort, truth reluctantly acknowledged. Jake pressed forward. Look, I know I'm new here. I know I'm from a species that still hasn't figured out how not to fight each other over stupid stuff. But Earth taught me something. We've got thousands of cultures on one planet. Different languages, different customs, different everything. And yeah, we messed up a lot. We built walls. We created protocols that separated people. Some of them lasted centuries. His voice grew passionate. But you know what we eventually figured out? The best way to understand someone isn't to memorize their protocols. It's to share a meal with them. To hear their stories. To see them as a person first and a culture second. That's how we started actually connecting. Not perfectly, we still screw up constantly. But we're trying. He turned to address the entire amphitheater now, not just Velkoth. Every species here has protocols. Thex have light language rules. Dorgothai have atmosphere-sharing customs. Zentari have telepathic boundaries. But somehow, we all manage to exist together. Not by memorizing every single rule, but by approaching each other with respect and genuine curiosity. That's what I did with Kira. And you know what? It worked. Velkotha's colors showed thoughtful consideration mixed with resistance. And what happens when your approach fails? When cultural misunderstanding leads to conflict? Then we apologize, we learn, and we do better next time. That's how growth works. That is how chaos returns. No, Jake said firmly. That's how cultures evolve. Professor Siktar stepped forward. Does the challenger have closing argument? Jake nodded. Just one thing. Ambassador, you said you're protecting your people from chaos. But I've been documenting something. He pulled up more data. Every single meal I shared with Kira, every conversation, every interaction, I recorded the context. Not to be creepy, but because I wanted to understand. And I found something. The displays lit up with pattern analysis. I accidentally created a new protocol. A human Velkhani interaction protocol. It's not as complex as traditional Velkhani ones, but it exists. It has patterns. It has structure. It's just different. Based on voluntary association instead of hierarchical positioning. Based on mutual respect instead of predetermined roles. Kira stared at the data, her colors blazing with shocked realization. He was right. They developed their own system. Their own way of communicating. It wasn't chaos, it was adaptation. So I'm not asking you to abandon your protocols, Jake finished. I'm asking you to let them grow. To remember that they were always meant to connect people, not isolate them. And to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, there's room for more than one way to do that. The amphitheater fell silent. All eyes turned to Velkoth. Ambassador Velkoth stood perfectly still, his colors cycling through patterns that Kira had never seen him display before. Contemplation mixed with something that looked like old memories. His skin shifted through deep blues and purples, colors that suggested he was thinking about things far beyond this debate, far beyond this moment. The entire amphitheater held its breath. Students who could breathe, anyway. The Zentari had gone completely still, probably sharing thoughts telepathically about what was happening. Even the Thek students stopped their constant light chiming. Finally, Velkotha's colors settled into something Kira recognized from ancient recordings, wisdom acknowledging change. When I was young, he began, his voice softer than before, Velkan was still recovering from the isolation period. We were rejoining the galaxy after 3 centuries of solitude. I was part of the first generation to meet other species since our ancestors had withdrawn. And I was terrified. This was not what anyone expected. Ambassadors didn't share personal fears. But Velkoth continued. I memoized every protocol. Every gesture. Every color sequence. I practiced until my skin would shift correctly even in my sleep. Because I believed, I still believe, that our protocols saved us once, and could save us again. Structure over chaos. Clarity over confusion. Rules over risk. He looked at Jake, and his colors showed something Kira had never seen from him before, respect for worthy opponent. But you have shown me something I had forgotten. Protocols were created by people who wanted to connect. Not people who wanted to hide. He paused. The challenger has presented superior argument. Not because he is correct about everything, but because he remembers what I had forgotten, that survival without connection is not truly living. The amphitheater exploded with noise. Students from every species reacted at once. Some cheered. Some looked shocked. The Velkhani students around Kira were displaying colors all over the spectrum, everything from outrage to relief to vindicated excitement. Velrin, who'd been so smug earlier, was now flickering confused disbelief. His whole worldview had just been shaken. Professor Siktar raised his hands for silence. The challenge is resolved. Ambassador Velkotha's directive is withdrawn. Kira of House Telvan may continue her association with Jake Carter of Earth. He paused, his ancient colors showing something that might have been amusement. However, the ambassador has the right to impose conditions. Velkotha's colors shifted to determine purpose. My condition is this, Jake Carter, you will work with me to develop an official human Velkhani cultural exchange program. You will document your methods properly. You will teach other students, both human and Velkhani, how to bridge our cultural differences. If you believe connection is possible, then prove it can be done systematically, not just accidentally. Jake's face broke into a massive grin. Deal. Absolutely. I can do that. I expect detailed reports. You'll get the most detailed reports you've ever seen. I'm talking footnotes. Appendices. Maybe even grass if I'm feeling fancy. Despite himself, Velkotha's colors flickered with what might have been amused tolerance. Then we are agreed. The amphitheater erupted again, but this time it was celebration. Students started talking excitedly, already planning how they might apply these new ideas to their own cross-species friendships. Kira sat frozen, her colors blazing through every shade of joy, relief, disbelief, gratitude. She couldn't process what had just happened. Jake had actually won. More than won, he'd changed Velkotha's mind. He'd changed everything. Jake bounded down from his platform and immediately ran to where she sat today. Protocol would have demanded a proper greeting sequence, a careful color observation, a structured interaction. Instead, he just hugged her. Every Velkani in the amphitheater gasped. Physical contact without proper preparation? Without permission protocols? Without. Kira's colors flashed brilliant amber, and she hugged him back. That's when something beautiful happened. Other students started moving toward each other. A Thek student carefully approached a Dorgothai and offered a light pattern greeting. A Zentari reached out a tentacle to a species they'd never spoken to before. All around the amphitheater, barriers were coming down. It wasn't chaos. It was connection. 6 months passed like a whirlwind. Kira barely recognized Celestial Academy anymore. The cafeteria, once divided into species-specific sections, had become a chaotic mix of everyone. Humans sat with Velkani, who sat with Theks, who sat with species Kira still couldn't pronounce the names of. Food sharing had become normal. Cross-species study groups formed without anyone thinking twice about it. The human students had arrived in force, 53 of them, to be exact. They spread through the academy like a friendly invasion, bringing their music, their sports, their terrible jokes, and their absolute refusal to accept that anyone was unapproachable. Jake and Kira co-taught the most popular class in the academy's history, cross-species social integration. Over 300 students had tried to enroll. They'd had to move it to the main amphitheater and offer it twice a week just to accommodate everyone. Okay, so today we're talking about the pizza protocol, Jake announced to a packed lecture hall. Which sounds silly, I know, but hear me out. Kira pulled up their research data on the displays. The pizza protocol is a framework for initiating contact across cultural barriers. Step 1, offer something from your culture. Something simple, shareable, and low stakes. For Jake, that was pizza. But it could be anything: music, art, stories, games. Step 2, Jake continued, present it without expectations. Don't demand they like it. Don't make it transactional. Don't use it to establish hierarchy or obligation. Just offer it because you think they might enjoy it. Step 3, be genuinely curious about their response. Whatever they do, accept it, reject it, analyze it with a scanner, that tells you something about them. Use that information to understand them better, not to judge them. A Thek student chimed a question that translated to, but what if your offer is accidentally offensive to their culture? Jake nodded. Great question. Yeah, you might mess up. I definitely messed up multiple times those first few weeks. Said things wrong, did gestures that apparently meant completely different things to different species. But here's the secret: if your intention is genuine connection, most people will forgive mistakes. Humans have a saying, Kira added, her colors showing warm teaching mode. It's better to ask forgiveness than permission. Not in all situations, obviously. Don't apply this to dangerous or disrespectful actions. But in terms of reaching out to someone who seems lonely, sometimes you just have to take the risk. Their methods were spreading beyond the academy. The Coalition Council had started testing the pizza protocol, officially called the Voluntary Cultural Exchange Initiative, at other stations. Early results were promising. Species that had barely interacted for decades were forming friendships. Trade negotiations were becoming easier. Even some long-standing diplomatic tensions were easing. Ambassador Velkoth had become an unlikely champion of the program. He'd written 3 papers on protocol evolution in multi-species environments that were being cited across the galaxy. He still maintained strict traditional standards in official settings, but Kira had noticed his colors were warmer now. Less rigid. More alive. One afternoon, Kira found herself back in that same corner of the cafeteria where this had all started. But it wasn't empty anymore. Jake was there, obviously, arguing with a human girl named Riley about whether hot dogs counted as sandwiches. A Thek student named Crystalline Hurifrax Morninglight, Chris for short, at their insistence, was teaching a Dorgothai student some kind of Earth card game. 2 Zentari were telepathically sharing something hilarious with a group of Velkani, who were all displaying amused appreciation colors. This corner, which had once represented her isolation, had become the most popular spot in the cafeteria. "Hey Kira," Riley called out, "settle this debate. Is a hot dog a sandwich?" "I have no cultural context for this argument and refuse to participate," Kira replied, her colors showing playful refusal. "Smart woman," Chris chimed in light language. "Never get involved in human food classification debates. They take it weirdly seriously." "Everything humans do is weird," one of the Zentari added affectionately. "Yeah, but we're fun weird," Jake protested. "Admit it, this place was boring before we showed up." "It was quieter," Kira said diplomatically. "Boring. I was right." As the friendly argument continued, Kira's tablet pinged with a notification. New student orientation was tomorrow, and she'd been assigned as a peer mentor. The student was from a species called the Kickstar, insectoid beings who communicated through pheromones that most species couldn't detect. They'd been part of the coalition for over a century but remained almost completely isolated because their communication method was so incompatible with everyone else's. Kira felt her colors shift to determined excitement. A challenge. Perfect. The next day, she waited in the cafeteria during lunch period. The Kickstar student, the orientation note said their name was Click 13 times, entered hesitantly. Their insectoid body was covered in a translation harness that converted their pheromones into text and other species speech into chemical signals they could understand. Despite this technology, they headed straight for the emptiest table, antennae drooping. Kira had seen this before. She knew exactly what to do. She grabbed the special pheromone-neutral food she'd requested from the kitchens, something that wouldn't interfere with Kickstar chemical communication. She walked straight to that empty table, sat down without hesitation, and pushed a plate toward Click 13 times. "Hey," she said, as her translation harness converted her words into pheromone patterns. "You like pizza?" Click 13 times' antennae shot up in surprise. Their harness translated their response, What is pizza?" Across the cafeteria, Jake was watching. He caught Kira's eye and grinned, giving her a thumbs up, a human gesture she'd learned meant approval and encouragement. She smiled back, her skin glowing that warm amber color she no longer tried to hide. "Pizza," Kira explained to the confused Kickstar student, "is how humans start friendships. Let me tell you about it." And as she began explaining, students from a dozen different species drifted over to listen and share their own stories. The once empty table filled with beings who'd learned that connection was possible if you were just willing to offer a slice of pizza and see what happened. The galaxy was changing, one meal at a time. And it had all started because a human saw someone sitting alone and decided that wasn't okay. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to let anyone eat lunch by themselves. Sometimes changing the universe starts with asking one simple question. "You like pizza?"